Hello, once again, I'm Garland Nixon standing in for the great George Galloway, and you are a big part of the show. The phone numbers, US 1-8+1 844-944-3344. In the UK, it's 08081-965522. And of course, the worldwide number is 0044-203-966-2625. The poll today, can Donald Trump force Putin into a Ukraine peace deal? We've got Telegram so far. We've got 6 yeses and 94 noes in Telegram. X, we've got 18 yeses and 82 noes. We have YouTube comments. We got 9 yeses and 91 noes. And Patreon, our great Patreon friends and donors, 0 yeses and 100 noes. I think the Patreon people are onto something here from my perspective. Let's get going. Prince Andrew. You know, this guy's got it rough. Apparently, there is a book coming out called Nobody's Girl, written by the prominent accuser of sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. It's due to be published next week, and it's about 6 months after Miss Giuffre took her own life. Allegedly, ostensibly took her own life. There are those of us who are very, very suspect about a woman who said, I'm not going to take my own life, taking her own life. But that seems to be something that happens quite frequently in the area of the intelligence community. But let us continue. So apparently she has made some pretty clear accusations of sexual abuse. And one of the things I think that's important here is this particular sentence that apparently is coming from her book. Several of us had been molested or raped as children, talking about the girls that were abused in the Epstein intelligence operation. It was an intelligence operation. It wasn't a bad guy. It wasn't a bad individual. It was an intelligence operation. It was a corrupt and evil system. Several of us had been molested or raped as children. Many of us were poor or even homeless. We were girls who no one cared about, and Epstein pretended to care. And Epstein and his backers pretended to care. Epstein and his supporters, Epstein and his funders pretended to care. And what we see once again is a system that preys on the poor, that preys on the weak, that preaches to us about human rights and standing up for the impoverished and the minorities and the LGBTQ community and all of these and acronyms they have to make up that we never even heard of. You know, in fact, a year ago, I found out that I was a BIPOC. And I'm like, well, I don't like the sound of that. No, Garland, it's a Black or indigenous person of color. And I'm like, I still don't like the sound of that. How about we go with Garland? Whatever the case may be, these people now are being exposed. And is there any justice here? Prince Andrew spent 10 million pounds sprucing up his royal lodge in Windsor, but he is going to forego his official titles. Boy, that is rough, huh? Give me $10 million. You can give me some official titles, so I'll get rid of them for $10 million. That's how bad it is. This illusion that somehow there's going to be justice for those who have been abused, when in fact, we can't get the names, or rather, excuse me, the names were on Pam Bondi's desk, and now the names don't exist anymore. So we can't get the names because they once existed, but apparently the Epstein list no longer exists. And we've been told that we're not even asking for the Epstein list because we said we'd like to see the Epstein list. And what we're told is, well, we may release the Epstein files. Have you noticed that? They changed it to files. We didn't ask for files. We asked for the names, and I don't think we're going to get the names. And it's not that the names are in Congress, that they're not in the House, they're not in the Senate, maybe not even the White House. The names are the people who own the people in the House and the Senate and in the White House more so than anything else. So we will cross our fingers. We'll hope for the best. We will continue to do what we're told not to do, which is our own research. How about that? Don't do your own research. Remember that during COVID? Well, we're going to continue to do our own research. And our own research shows that there's something rotten in Denver, that it's kind of hard to believe that somebody gets shot in the neck with a 30-06 and the bullet lodges below their skin like it was a BB. And of course, that Epstein killed himself, Virginia Jeffrey killed himself. I ain't planning on committing suicide, so I'm looking around. Hopefully I'll make it through this show. And you will too. All right, here's another big one, of course, as you know, about the ceasefire that never ceased. The Israelis continue to protect themselves from a mass of starving and imprisoned unarmed civilians using fighter planes and missiles and bombs against people who have none of those three things. The United States continues to stand for human rights, except for when it comes to Palestine and pretty much everything else. And the Palestinians, once again, are being bombed this morning. It seems to me that what happens is in these so-called ceasefires, safe zones, etc., that the cat's paw for the U.S. and the British Empire in Israel uses these opportunities to bring the Palestinians to an area where they're all gathered together to make it easier to bomb them. Whether it's telling them that there's food, hey, we've got food and water, come right here to get the food and water. Of course, when the Palestinian civilians show up, they mow them down with machine guns. And now they're saying we've got a ceasefire. It's safe. You can all come out, go to this area right here, and you'll be perfectly safe. It's kind of like the old cartoons, the old Bugs Bunny cartoons, where he would have someone that he wanted to drop a piano on, and they'd spray paint an X on the sidewalk, and he'd say, stand right here. And of course, there's the shadow of an anvil or a piano above the person. The person stands there and they're mushed. Sadly, that's what we have on a genocidal scale, where continually the Palestinians are told to go to an area where they'll be safe. They're never safe. We're told that there are ceasefires. There ain't no ceasefire. There isn't any ceasefire coming. And might I add, we are told that it is Israel, that the United States and England and these other countries are totally opposed to bad things, but they're just supporting Israel. And they just can't control the evil Netanyahu and his minions, when in fact, everything that's done by Israel is paid for, it's funded, it's armed. All of this comes from the U.S., all of this comes from the UK, and just every now and then they simply say, oh, no, we weren't really involved. We just kind of, we don't want this to happen. But of course, we got to work with Israel because we're powerless against a country of 9 million people that we totally and completely fund. Meanwhile, we have to tell American citizens, we can't afford to fund you anymore. I know you want health care and decent schools and free college and things like that. Now, Israel has all of those things, but you can't have nice things because we have genocides that we have to fund. And you wonder why the American people are unhappy. Speaking of which, the No Kings rally, right? This so-called No Kings rally. I got some notes on the No Kings rally. The good thing about the No Kings rally is this. They already won. We don't have a king. How great is that? That you can have a rally. You know what? How about a No Martians rally? We don't have Martians either. I mean, to draw a bunch of people in and say, we're going to have a rally for something that we don't have. This is centrist liberalism today in its finest form. It is, let's ask for nothing. Let's have a giant rally. Let's go to the streets, and we'll just simply say we don't want Donald Trump. The system's fine. The system's great. The system, maybe a little genocides every now and then. Maybe there's possible nuclear war with another power, but that's not important now. What's important is Donald Trump says friendly things in tweets, and he embarrasses us. So we got to get rid of Donald Trump. Just in case you were wondering and you wanted to look into the No Kings rally a little bit, it is organized by an organization called indivisible.org. It has two co-founders, Leah Greenberg and Ezra Levin. It's a husband and wife duo. Interesting things about the two of them. Leah Greenberg, both of them have a background in NGOs. Leah Greenberg is a former State Department advisor. You'll find that pretty surprising, I guess. She worked for she was a lobbyist for Humanity United. That was an NGO founded and funded by eBay mogul Pierre Omidyar. And there's something else interesting about her. She worked in several capacities for Tom Piarello, former when he was running for governor of Virginia, and also when he was in the House of Representatives. She worked with him. And in fact, here's a guy that presided. He was the MC, the master of ceremonies at Ezra and Leah's wedding. Interesting thing about this guy is up until very recently, and I mean within the last few months, he was the, I don't know what the term is, CEO, whatever you want to call it. He was the leader of the Open Society Foundation, of George Soros's foundation. So it's clearly obvious that these people are old in the game. They're old players in the game of regime change, of misleading people with propaganda. And now they have been able to sucker millions of people into the streets to say, we don't want a king when there isn't any kings. And oh, by the way, you can have a prince because, hey, England has one to spare, but you still gotta, allow him to live in a, multi-million-dollar mansion to enjoy life at the highest level, paid for by the rapidly impoverished British people. But he doesn't get to call himself Prince Andrew anymore. I guess he'll be in Dubai. Maybe he'll pick up more chicks there. He'll be like, hey, I'm just Andrew. Aren't you Prince Andrew, that guy that was like with the Virginia thing and Geoffrey? No. That was Prince Andrew. You can trust me. I'm just plain old Andrew. Why don't you get in my expensive car that's paid for by the British people so we can go out and have a good time? Boy, that guy's really getting his comeuppance, huh? That's the way it works. When you're part of this system, you do your dirt, and you're amply rewarded, kind of like the mafia. I tell people I was in law enforcement. I know of an instance where there was a mafia guy when I was in law enforcement. He was arrested, and he wouldn't talk. No matter what, he was facing 30 years. He wouldn't talk. And instead of 30 years, his lawyer was able to get him out, get like 3 years. He was out in like 18 months. True story. When he got out, his mafia bosses took bulldozers, bulldozed his house, which was on the water, and built a giant mansion and new boats, speed boats, these Miami vibes, everything. That was his reward for keeping his mouth shut. And that's the way it works. And now, if you think about it, is it an accident that Prince Andrew, in the same week that he's exposed as a maniacal abuser of young girls, of impoverished and emotionally damaged young girls, and in the same week that he's exposed, is that $10 million. Oh, Andrew, things are kind of rough. You're going to have to give up the prince part. I tell you what, I know it feels bad. Here's $10 million. Why don't you spruce up your Windsor Castle or whatever the hell over there? And, you make up for it. And we'll give you another $10 million next week. After all, what do the British people need this $10 million for? They just wasted on food and lodging and eating and things like that. That's not important now. We're going to move forward. Donald Trump. Let me add this about Trump. This whole No King's March misses the reality about Donald Trump. It is liberal centrism today to say the system is fine. The system is great. A little bit of, maybe a genocide every now and then, but we can overlook that. That Donald Trump is the problem. It's just Trump. That all we'd have to do is get rid of Donald Trump and this system would be perfectly fine. In fact, the way liberal centrism works, especially the so-called liberal lefties of today works, is like this. We are to ensure that when the government has, let's say, $1 trillion, our job is to ensure that the working class gets a part of that $1 trillion. Of course, we got to get a part with our NGOs, but the working class gets a part of it. They get some into their health care. They get a piece of the pie. It is the liberal so-called lefties today is about a piece of the pie. Hey, we want to make sure that the people that we represent get the biggest or at least a fair piece of the pie. But what we are never allowed to talk about is how many bodies from Africa and Latin America and Asia and the Middle East are baked into that pie. You see, liberal leftdom today, leftness, whatever you want to call it, in the West is pro-colonial. It's pro-imperial. It's pro-regime change war. So we can just ignore that Maria Corina Machado from Venezuela just got the Nobel War Prize. And as she is literally calling for a regime change war attack on her country, that's not important right now. It's that Donald Trump is tweeting bad things. We can kind of ignore that Donald Trump right now and the U.S. empire is sending warships towards Venezuela to threaten the Venezuelan people. Because Maduro is a dictator. But there is one contradiction. I got to throw a contradiction for the Maduro dictator part of this. Maduro's a dictator. And the people hate him. Obviously, because you'd hate a dictator. Well, who wants to be dictated to? So he's arming his people. the Venezuelan government has given out millions of arms, military grade arms, AK-47s, bullets, you name it, to the people so that they can fight to defend their revolution. That's a contradiction, isn't it? I mean, if he was an evil dictator and the people hated him and he gave them guns, they'd point the guns at him, wouldn't they? It would seem to me that the people know what direction to point the guns. So why would it? And historically speaking, when is an evil dictator, Vlad, the evil Putin that we've been told in Russia and the Chinese government and Maduro, we're told evil dictators, but somehow the people in those countries don't agree. But this particular dictator, being the most evil, has said, I will literally arm the people of my country. And they're not going to turn their guns on me. They're going to use the guns to fight and defend their democracy. That doesn't add up, doesn't it? Does it? Doesn't sound like a dictator to me. And I'll say this about Donald Trump. Let me say this about Trump when it comes to the issue of Venezuela and the No Kings business. I personally think Donald Trump is the best representative that America has ever had. You know, as a guy who, I'm old school, I love the old horror movies, vampires and werewolves and, zombies. That's kind of the foundation of horror movies, right? And in the vampire movies, Fright Night being one of my favorite, in the vampire movies, what happened? The vampire would be either some handsome, dashing man or some gorgeous, voluptuous sexual woman. She was never slim. She was voluptuous. She was bombshell shaped, right? And she's in bars and the guys see her, or this guy's handsome. The women, they're hypnotized by their beauty, amongst other things. And eventually they're lured back to wherever the evil deed will happen. And at some point, the vampire transforms into this demonic-looking figure with, the long nails and the fangs, etc. And at that point, the person realizes that they've been had. They're like, uh-oh, this ain't a pretty hot girl that I met in the bar. This is an evil demonic being, and I suspect I'm about to be get bitten in the neck, right? It's Donald Trump. Donald Trump is he is America, but he's not the dashing, good-looking, handsome vampire in the bar. When he walks into the bar, the fangs are already out. And that makes it harder to get a victim. And all of the potential victims can look at the vampire and say, hey, I want no part of that guy. I suspect he'll do something very, very mean to me if I give him the opportunity. That's why Donald Trump is bad for America, but he's good for the world. He's bad for the working class, but he's good for the world, because the world can see the brutality, the barbarism, and the savagery of U.S. imperialism and colonialism, period. And unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, the centrist liberal class refused to accept that, because you know what? They just want to make sure that everybody gets a piece of the pie. This red, trust me, it's a red pie, and that ain't cherry juice. It ain't a cherry pie. That's the blood of the people of Africa. And right now, it's the blood of the Palestinians, and it's the blood of the Asians. And you know what? There are a lot of people in this country that are not, in this world, that are not willing to give their blood anymore. So, I think to some extent we could thank Donald Trump and say, Donald Trump, you are the representation of America that we've been waiting for 250 years. A lot of us internally know it's there, but there were other people that watched a Hollywood movie and they thought, hey, you know what? I think that when I turn 25 in America, I will be issued a Ferrari and a beautiful supermodel. That ain't the way it happens. That's not the way it happens. Well, thank you, everybody. We've got a lot going on today. We have our great poll: can Trump force Putin into a Ukraine peace deal? Force Putin into a Ukraine peace deal. He can't even force the government into a deal to stay open here in the United States. And don't forget the phone numbers. That's in the U.S. +1 844-944-3344. In the UK, it's 08081 965522, and worldwide it's 0044 203 966 2625. You're watching Mother of All Talk Shows with Garland Nixon. George has the night off. He'll be back on Wednesday, and we're coming back with your calls.